Just a quick bit of background for the audience as well. I've been working in the low-code space now for, if you include the time I spent at IBM with their BPM technology, which is actually now sort of seen as part of low-code, probably about 15 years. The current company I work for, OutSystems, about 5 years. What I'm going to present today is low-code. A lot of people have heard of, but I did want to give a quick introduction to set some context around what it is, but also why it exists. Then I think the best way for people to understand how low code relates to software architecture best practices is to give you a bit of a look at how this actually works in real life. Obviously, the platform I'm most familiar with is the one of the company I work for, and I'll show you a few aspects of that: development, DevOps, and architectural governance. And then a quick look at what the future holds, especially again with a focus on architecture. But let's kick off with what is actually low code and why does it exist? Well, for a start, even if you haven't heard of it like Daryl, you probably will very soon. Gartner's opinion is that almost 2/3 of software development will include low code within the next 2 years. So it's definitely become much more prevalent. Gartner sees the following 4 reasons as the key driving factors behind it. One is the requirement for lower skills. This is often where you'll hear the term citizen development. It's also there to partly address what is really a universal skill shortage in IT. It's particularly acute, for example, for Daryl and myself here in Australia, but in many other countries as well. It's a multifunction capability. In the top right-hand corner, one of the big reasons we are seeing customers adopt it is around higher productivity. Getting more done with fewer people in less time and costing less is always a big driver for many organizations. And finally, the focus of this presentation is really the bottom right-hand corner, which is the runtime practices, built-in security, high availability, DR, etc. This is from IDC. They have a pretty similar point of view, just to highlight some of maybe the additional points they make here. Escaping from legacy gridlock. There are still a lot of systems out there that are very old and need to be replaced, and low code, one of the key use cases is for addressing that. What I like to focus on though is really around what matters most for most businesses, which is being able to innovate and allowing developers and development teams, including product owners, etc., to focus on what drives business value is the best way that businesses can take advantage of technology. Innovators tend to focus on the value chain, so removing intermediaries. This is very common if you look at a lot of startups. Overall, a lot of their business models is actually focused on getting the business closer to the end customer, whether that customer is another business or an actual customer like you and me, and doing that with frictionless experiences, making things as easy as possible. If you think about, some of the great online experiences you have with organizations like Amazon, they make it very easy for us to buy their stuff. So taking control of the value chain, providing a great customer experience, agility, as well as an underpinning software architecture that leverages the talent that you have is really where we focus. So there are business aspects to this as well as IT aspects, and I'm going to be focusing on, for this presentation, more the ones on the right. Just to understand the low-code landscape overall a little bit, I think this Gartner summary from last year is a useful way to see how the different vendors have arrived under this banner. And I've annotated it with what my personal view is and includes the heritage of these companies. So for a start, we have platforms that really target themselves primarily as citizen development tools. So in other words, being able to leverage line of business to build applications. There are other platforms which come from a process and workflow heritage. Appian and Pega are the 2 best known out of these. And they have expanded capabilities to do other functions. There are some platforms that are very domain-centric, such as Salesforce with CRM, ServiceNow with ITSM, and Oracle with a range of products. and they have their strengths in that particular domain, and again are expanding out beyond that. The two highest ranking vendors in the quadrant, OutSystems and Mendix, were actually built from the ground up as purpose-built software development platforms, and I think that is partly the reason why they are positioned in the top part of the quadrant, because of the breadth of capability that they show across the board. All of the other platforms have very strong capabilities, especially in their core strengths. Once you move outside of those core strengths, then they may not be as applicable for the sorts of use cases you might be interested in. All right. There is another Gartner report that I suggest you go and access. You do need a Gartner subscription for it. However, if you do want to get it, because of copyright, we or other vendors are not allowed to share it. It's the solution comparisons for low-code application platforms, and it goes into a lot of detail at the architectural level around the differences between 4 of the top platforms. So if you are interested after this talk, go and have a look at that. The types of challenges, so what can you do with low-code? And I would argue with a capable low-code platform, you really can do pretty much any type of business application you would actually do with traditional code. So while the previous slides were talking about what the analyst view is compared to different low-code platforms, a capable platform that you are looking to roll out in an enterprise really should be able to do pretty much what you're doing with, for example, Java and C# and .NET today. And that often fits into one of these categories: customer experience transformation, so often around building market share. Workplace innovation has become a really common use case that we're seeing because of the pandemic, a lot more people working from home. Process digitization, so the usual sort of process optimization and workflow. And finally, one I already mentioned, which is application modernization. So rather than just doing a lift and shift of applications into the cloud, leveraging the higher productivity of a low-code platform to re-engineer them and make them a better fit for the business at the same time. I'll quickly show you what's inside the box with the platform I work with, and then I'll get into some demonstrations. So if you look at the first column, this is probably what you would be expecting of a low-code platform. It can build user interfaces for web and for mobile. It can build out logic. It can build out processes, and it can build out your data layer. And any sort of business application you can think of probably uses one or more of those capabilities. The second column is also very important. Obviously, if we're talking about deployment into an enterprise, the ability to integrate and extend is really important as well. And beyond just leveraging SOAP and REST type integrations, integrating directly with databases, but also leveraging a rich set of components is important. The sort of customers I deal with actually take a couple of approaches. Some of them will leverage the integration capabilities in the platform I work with. Others will already have an integration layer, a MuleSoft, a SnapLogic, something like that, and we will leverage that. The third part, the third column here is perhaps one that doesn't get enough attention that it really deserves. Low-code platforms are really starting to show a lot of maturity in lifecycle management. So for example, the one that I work with actually does not require any sort of setup to do release management. It does performance monitoring. It does a lot of the other things that typically you would need to invest time, money, and resources in building yourself. So all of the process of pushing applications up through your stack, through your CI/CD pipeline is largely automated, and all that's required is to set up a governance layer. The final column here is around experiences, and the goal of a good platform is to be able to provide whatever experiences, whether it's web, mobile, APIs, chatbots, whatever that the business application requires for minimal disruption. And of course, the underpinning architecture that we'll talk about shortly is that these applications need to be scalable, they need to be secure, we need to be able to deploy them on the cloud, on-premise, etc. Okay. So let's have a look at this from a demonstration perspective. I'm going to take you through 4 different parts of the demo. First of all, I'm going to show you an application to orient you with how a typical low-code application actually looks. Then I'm going to build something from scratch. So it's going to be obviously a lot smaller, but it gives you a bit of a feel for the different parts in a bit more detail. Then we'll look at the automated DevOps. And finally, we'll look at how the architecture of applications that are built on this platform can be more easily managed. Okay, so let me just switch to that. Now, there may be questions. This again, please capture them in the questions area, and I will address them at the end of the presentation. So this is the OutSystems low-code development environment called Service Studio. You can see across in the top right, these are the 4 layers that correspond to the 4 capabilities that I talked about from a development perspective. We have a process management layer, an interface layer, a business logic layer, and a data layer. And you can see as I sort of flip across to these different layers, everything is built in a visual way, including the code, the database, and the business processes. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch the application first, and I'm going to log into it and give you a bit of a view of what it is. Again, I don't think you're here to see what an order management application is, but I do want to at least give you a bit of a feel for the sorts of applications that are built in the architecture. So it's an order management example. You log in, you see a dashboard, we've got some charts, we've got some figures. We have a few other things in here, so we can look at orders. I can, for example, go into an order. I can convert that for approval now. There's a business rule that says that they expire after 30 days, so I might need to go in here and update some of the parameters on it so that I can go and